We, to a great extent, behave, think, react because of some previous experience that we've had. One of the things that we know about life is that it is always changing. Sometimes you're up, sometimes you're down. But during those down moments, that's where the growth takes place. The real challenge of growth, mentally, emotionally, and spiritually, comes when you get knocked down. Somebody said that adversity introduces a man to himself or a woman. How you handle it suggests this is one of the first things that you want to do when you're facing a challenge. You want to get unstuck. Evaluate where you are. Look at it. Assess yourself. Assess yourself and assess the situation. What brought you there? What role did you play? Earl Nightingale had a saying I like. He said, all of us are self-made, but only the successful will admit it. What has brought you to this point? What did you learn from it? Are you learning anything, or are you doing it over and over and over again? Somebody said that insanity is doing the same thing in the same way, expecting a different outcome. Are you going through it, or are you growing through it? Are you bigger and better because of it? Because it's not going to leave you until you grow through it. A friend of mine went through a divorce. My best friend. He had a wife that did not love him as much as he loved her. It was his first real true love. He was a very religious man. Did not believe in divorce. He made a mistake. And he paid for his mistake with a lot of pain, a lot of tears. And there came to a point where he knew he should have gotten a divorce. But he was stuck. He was stuck in something called revenge. He said, she's made me so miserable, I'm going to pay her back. He was stuck. And he stayed in there longer than he should have because it began to attack him. It began to affect him psychologically. And as a result of that, when he eventually did get a divorce, he took that same attitude to other relationships, looking for something to go wrong. He was burned so badly, he did not want to risk pain again. He was going in relationships trying to avoid pain. When it became too close, he would do something to make sure the relationship did not work. He would always try and find something wrong with the person because there are no perfect people. So if you look for it, you can find it. He was stuck in revenge. Another friend of mine, working on a job, loved the company very much, expected to retire there. And one day they called him in the office, asked him for his badge and identification, called the security man up, walked into his desk, told him he was fired and he had to leave then. He was devastated. And if you came anywhere near him, he will tell you his story, as we all have stories. Even when he got a job, he went on the job telling anybody who would listen how they fired him unjustly. And he always ended with, it wasn't fair. Life isn't fair. Life just is. It's not fair that birds eat worms, and they do. But he's stuck in the fact that it's not fair. I don't deserve that. They were wrong. Another friend of mine, we called him Chicken Man. He had a feather in his hat. He had a toy chicken on top of his car that he would drive around the area in downtown, blinking his lights and occasionally blowing his horn. When he got out of his car, he would walk downtown with a baby carriage with two little baby dolls in there and a picture of a woman. And when you say something to him or came near him, you would hear him making the sounds of a chicken. All of us used to laugh at Chicken Man. We didn't know Chicken Man's story. Chicken Man woke up one morning around 3 a.m. and his house was on fire. He panicked and he got out of the window and left quickly, only to get outside to hear his children and his wife screaming for help. He ran back to the door to go in to save them, and the flames were too hot, too awesome. He tried to get in, he couldn't get in. He was desperate, frantic. Pretty soon the cries stopped. They perished in the fire. His brother-in-law came, found out that his sister had died and his nieces in the fire, grabbed Chicken Man and started beating him. You chicken, why did you save my sister? You're chicken, you're chicken. When the people pulled him off, Chicken Man, they picked him up and said, are you all right? And Chicken Man looked at him and he started making the sounds of a chicken. He never ever overcame that tragedy. He was stuck from that experience. None of us knew why Chicken Man went around with this picture and these little dolls. I was reading a book on forgiveness, and they had a line in there that says, forgive and grow. Well, you see, your mind is, you know, when you go into a service station to get gas, you don't go in there and just start pumping. When you push the lever up, it clears the previous bill. By the same token, if you want to begin to move, you've got to clear your mind of all the unnecessary luggage and baggage that's weighing us down. You're going to have people to do things to you. Things are going to happen to you. And the most important thing to do is to harness your will and let it go and move so you can grow, so you can get on with your life. It doesn't matter about what happens to you. What matters is, what are you going to do about it? Huh? How long are you going to tell everybody at the bus stop and anybody who would stand and listen to you? How long are you going to repeat the same thing? Don't go around telling people what your story is. Everybody has a story. 80% don't care and 20% glad it's you. All of us got stories to tell. Chicken Man allowed his tragedy to destroy his life. All of us have experienced some tragedy, and if we haven't, we will. And you can either let it destroy your life or you can build upon it. You can permit it to let it hold you down, or you can decide, I'm not going to let that happen to me. I'm bigger than this. Make a declaration to yourself. Declare all out war that you're going to get out of this rut. I don't care how good you are. I don't care how talented you are. I don't care how much you work on yourself. There are some times when things aren't going to go right. They just are not going to go right. There are times when anything that can happen will happen. Murphy's Law will be knocking at your door. Why? I don't know why. That's called life. And you have to deal with it. I suggest to you that if you are facing a challenge, don't stop. Stay busy. Work your plan. Continue to do those things that you know that work for you after you have evaluated yourself in the situation. Continue to move. Stay busy, stay busy, stay busy. Repeat after me. Help somebody. And help yourself. Because what you give is what you get. Find somebody that you can help so you can forget about you for a moment. See, sometimes the best thing to do is to be. Sometimes you have to just back up and go within yourself. A bow and arrow, you can't take a bow and just push it out an arrow. You just can't push the arrow out. You have to pull it back and then release it. Sometimes you have to back up and go within and pray and meditate and recharge your batteries. Go away, clear your head, and then come back and look at it from a different vantage point. Don't operate while you're under the spell or the effect of what's going on. Next thing is that you've got to activate the thinker in you. Don't allow your emotions to control you. We are emotional, but you want to begin to discipline your emotion. If you don't discipline and contain your emotions, they will use you. Your mind goes on automatic, just like a garden. You know, weeds don't have to have any encouragement to grow. You don't have to water them. They don't have to get sunshine. They don't have to have fertile ground. They will grow through the cracks of a sidewalk. But if you want to grow orchids or roses or any kind of exotic flowers, there are special processes and procedures you must go through. Well, by the same token, you don't have to force yourself or motivate yourself to think negatively, to be depressed, to hate somebody, to want revenge, to want to get back at somebody, to beat yourself up over the head, to feel loaded with guilt. You don't have to make any effort to do that. Your mind is on automatic. It will do that by itself. But if you want to begin to move into your own personal greatness, If you want to begin to really enjoy a happy, successful, healthy life, you've got to be willing to go against the tide. You've got to be willing to harness your will and say, in spite of this, I'm in control here. I'm not going to let this get me down. I'm not going to let this destroy me. I'm coming back, and I'll be stronger and better because of it. You have got to make a declaration that this is what you stand for. You're standing up for your dreams. You're standing up for peace of mind. You're standing up for health. You want it, and you're going to go all out to have it. It's not going to be easy. When you want to change, it's not easy. If it were in fact easy, everybody would do it. But if you're serious, you'll go all out. So yes, I'm going to turn this situation around. I'm not going to sit back and moan and cry over what happened and what went wrong and who did what. I'm going to do something about this situation. The next thing that is important is that expect things to get better for you, because they are. See, life is cyclic. You're not, whatever experience you're having right now, it has not come to stay. It has come to pass. Not to stay, just to pass. It's just going through. The biggest challenge is to know what's happening. This is a part of this thing we call life. This too shall pass. See, a lot of us, because of our limited vision of ourselves, a lot of us who begin to focus on problems and enable them to overwhelm us, we begin to think that we have no options. We begin to believe that there's no way out. Repeat after me, there's always a way. Where there's a will, there's a way. You've got to make those kind of declarations to yourself. I'm unstoppable. This will not get me down. What are some of those things that you can do during this period of time? Go for walks. Do some things for you. Just go for a stroll so you can engage in some reflective thinking on life, on yourself, looking and enjoying the universe, smelling the roses along the way. Listen to upbeat music, music that inspires you. I have oldie but goodies. I have strategies that I engage in to recharge my batteries. A very good friend of mine died the other day. I had a program for myself. I have books that I read that inspire me, tapes that I listen to that fire me up. Because you're going to have sometimes low moments when you won't want to get out of bed. You just want to stay there. The other thing is, take full responsibility for your life. Accept where you are and the responsibility that you're going to take yourself where you want to go. Someone said we have two primary choices in life. We can either accept conditions as they exist, or we can take the responsibility to change them. See, a lot of people want to exempt themselves from taking responsibility. All they want to do is talk about the problem. Every time you see them, they'll tell you their story over and over and over and over again. No, no. You want to take responsibility for your life. I got me here, I can get me out of this. And I'm getting out. I'm not going to be a volunteer victim. George Bernard Shaw said there are two kinds of people in life. You know, he said those that make things happen, those that watch things happen, and those that don't know what happened. And he said the people that get along in this life look around for the circumstances that they want, and if they can't find them, they make them. They create them. So part of beginning to get unstuck, you've got to decide that the behavior pattern that you have adopted doesn't work for you. You've got to change your strategies, and changing your strategy means reinventing your life. Recreating you, and you have the power to do that. Next thing is separate what you do from who you are. That's what the guilt trap is about. All of us have done some things that if we had them to do over again, we wouldn't do it again. There are a lot of things that if I had it to do over again, if I knew then what I know now, I would have done it differently. Well, it didn't happen that way. So as you're in the process of reinventing your life, write a description of the kind of person that you want to be. What are the things that you must overcome? What qualities about your personality you know that you're going to have to change, because those particular characteristics are liabilities to you? What are your assets? What are your strong points? Look at and evaluating yourself to make that determination. Other thing is that in order to get out of a rut, we need some coaching. Find some trusted critics. People that you know care about you and love you. So there's some things that keeps us from growing and getting out of ruts. Number one, we identify with feedback. We take it personal when someone wants to give us some feedback on where we are falling short and tell us about our blind spots. We want to have everything being positive about us. We're not perfect. It hurts. I have a friend who's a trusted critic. I don't like him, but I love him. He doesn't tell me the things I want to hear. He tells me what I need to hear so I can grow. It hurts. It hurts when he put me on the hot seat. I can't stand it. But that's the only way that I can grow. And I'm glad that he loves me enough to risk our friendship to tell me what I need to hear, not what I want to hear. The other thing is about life, when things happen to you, when you permit things to use you, you can't change the past, but you can interpret. You can reinterpret how you see it. So when you begin to look at your past, give an interpretation that empowers you. That's where I used to be. That's not where I am now. I'm growing. Now I want you to think about, in your mind right now, think about some particular event or act in your life that you feel very bad about, that you really regret that took place. If you had to do over again, you would do it differently. With that there, I want you to see yourself in your mind's eye and say to yourself, I love myself unconditionally. And I forgive myself. If I knew better, I would have done better. Let me tell you something about the mind, how it uses you. I'll tell you something super stupid that I used to do. Do you know for years I hated my mother and my father, whoever they were, because they gave me away as I thought at that point in time? And guess what? I didn't have any faces for the hatred, because I never saw either one of them. And I said, I hate them for that. And then once I forgave them and said, it's okay, had they not given me away, I would have never been blessed to have the mother that I have, who to me is the greatest mother in the world. So the universe unfolds as it should. But when I went through this process, saying forgive them, I remember in my mind as I was trying to picture these people, I had two individuals in my mind standing there with no faces because I didn't know how they look. But I released that. I let that luggage go. Think about somebody that you've hurt, somebody that you've disappointed, either deliberately or inadvertently. Look at them in your mind's eye and say, I forgive you. Whew, boy, that's a heavy load to let off. If you want to be forgiven, you better forgive somebody. Let it go so you can grow. It's not easy, but through practice and practice and practice. Practice makes what? Absolutely not. Dismantle that belief system. Practice makes improvement. You can always better your best. You can always go beyond anything that you have ever done. You'll never hit a state of perfection. You're always bigger than what you do. Read inspirational books, of course. Listen to tapes that begin to inspire you. And stay around people who will empower you. People that will help you feel good about who you are as you're in the process of transforming your life.
You know what the coolest thing in the world to me was? When I was a kid, it wasn't an interception. I used to go across the track in my neighborhood and there was a swimming pool, right? And I used to go by the swimming pool and I would stand on the fence and I would see a father, and when he would grab a kid, whether it was his son or his daughter, and he would throw the kid up in the air and he would catch him and the kid would laugh, and I would be like, man, I can't wait until I get a family one day so I could throw my kids up and catch them in the pool, right? I can't wait until I can hug my mother with 2 arms, hug my wife, hug my 3 little sisters with 2 arms, and it's things that people take for for granted every single day. And so when I said to him physically, I'm like, JD, all of those things are eliminated. I said, but I will use this arm in his hand every day of my life for the rest of my life, because I would never allow a situation or a circumstance to define my life. I said, JD, what better way for God to show up than in the midst of the opposition? What better way for God to prove his power and his grace than in the midst of the adversity? I said, JD, what better way for God to work in the lives of those I'm connected to than in the midst of the opposition? The only thing I've ever done was stay out of God's way and say, God, you're going in that direction? Okay, cool, let's rock. God, you want to do this with my life? Cool, let's rock. I never wanted to speak. They put me in public speaking in college. I dropped the class on the second day. I despised it. As I was walking out of the class, I said to my buddy, I was like, man, I'll never be needing that. And the coach was on the other side of me, and he said, Inky, you never know, until the point of complete confusion. Because as people, what do we try to do? We try to control, like in certain areas of life, they'll call it controlling the narrative, right? When you try to jump out in front of situations, opposition, trouble, and you try to control it. Like if we walked out of this building right now, and we walked down to the high school with 10 people, and we said, okay, when we get to the high school, I want 5 people to go right, I want 5 people to go left. Everybody would probably turn around and say, why? Why do you want me to go left? Why? Why should I trust you to walk down to the high school? We want to control the narrative. We want to know what's next. And so when my injury happened, I'm still trying to control my life. And I said, okay, I'll become a coach. I'll coach. Football, natural transition. I start down the path to become a coach. 3 years in, graduate assistant. My wife is back in Atlanta teaching. She calls me one day and she says, Inky, I'm pregnant. Somehow I got pregnant. I don't know. Somehow it happened. And I go to Coach Foreman. I said, listen, here's the deal. My wife is pregnant. I really need to go back. He said, man, go be there for your family. And I call a guy trying to control the narrative. Me and Pastor was talking about this. He said, God cannot work and God cannot take you where he wants to take you until you allow God to take you where he wants to take you. And most of the time when that happens is when you say, I yield, because you're in such a place of confusion in your life and you can no longer control it. And so it places you in a position to where it has to fortify your faith. And so I called the guy and I said, man, listen, I'm coming to Atlanta. I really need a job. And he worked at the rec center. And he said to me, Inky, you can come, man. You can create curriculums for the kids. I'll pay you $20,000 a year, whatever. And you can just ride it off into the sunset. I said, praise God, I'm coming. And I get there the next day and I go up to the gymnasium. I call the guy. He never responds. I email him, never respond. The people there, I give them my resume, my paperwork, and they say to me, oh, you're overqualified. I said, what is that? They say, yeah, you can't work here. And I found myself in my wife's grandmother's home. My wife had our daughter, Jada. Jada's sleeping in a wagon that somebody bought her for her birthday, and we would put pillows in the wagon. And I'm 2 blocks away from where I grew up in that 2-bedroom home with 14 people. And I'm like, God, why did you take me from this neighborhood to the University of Tennessee, play football, get 10 games from the NFL, and bring me right back to the same neighborhood in my wife's grandmother's home with my daughter sleeping in a wagon and no money? And I would get up every single day. My wife would get dressed to go teach. I would get dressed and I would go look for a job. And people would say, you're overqualified. And I knew most of the people were saying this because I got a disability. They were looking at it in terms of, man, I don't know what I can do with this guy. And I was cool with it. I totally understood it. And at the time, the only thing I had was my book. And I had written my book as a journaling process to help me get through my injury. And so I would just journal, I put it in book form, and I really just wanted to give it to my grandmother. And one morning I get up with my wife and we're getting dressed and she's in the mirror and I'm standing there beside her and I say to my wife, babe, you're not gonna believe it. She said, what you got, Ink? I said, I'm headed to Chicago. I'm about to go meet Oprah and give her my book. And my wife looked at me, she said, Ink, you know Oprah? I said, nope. She said, oh, you know anybody at Harpo Studios? I was like, nope. She said, you sure? I said, yes, ma'am. She said, go for it. I had a 2X suit. I had a little bit over $200 to my name, and I had my truck. I went, I jumped in my truck, I'm praying, I'm like, Lord, please don't let me catch a flat. I catch a flat, it's over with. And I start driving, and I get to Chattanooga, and I call my buddy Jeff, that's in Knoxville. Jeff picks up, Jeff's an attorney, he's well off. All right, he's my buddy. I call him, Jeff picks up and says, Ink, what's up? I said, Jeff, you're not gonna believe it. He said, what you got, Ink? I said, man, I'm headed to Chicago to meet Oprah. I'm about to give her the book. Jeff says, oh, Ink, you know Oprah? I said, no. He said, oh, I get it. Ink, I understand you're a highly ambitious person, but I need you to hang this phone up and call me back when you get to Knoxville. Chances of that happening are slim to none. I call Jeff when I get to Knoxville. Jeff picks up. He says, you're still going, aren't you? I said, yep. He says, stop by and pick me up. I'm gonna ride with you because I don't want you to be too disappointed when it doesn't happen. I pick Jeff up. We get to Chicago that night. Jeff goes up. Jeff gets us a room. Next morning we get up. I go to the front desk. I'm asking for directions. Jeff is standing in the corner getting ready to go work out. I get directions. I'm going to walk out of the building. Jeff jogs over. He says, Ink, wait. He said, I'm gonna go with you, man. I'm gonna get us a taxi. I don't want you to be too disappointed when it doesn't happen. We pull up to Harpo Studios in the taxi. Place is massive. People everywhere. It's when our last shows were happening. We get out of the car. Jeff says to me, hey, Ink, I'm going across the street to this coffee shop. I'm sure this won't be long. I'll see you in a minute. I get the book. I walk around the building. Every door that will open, I would run into the door. And I would say, hey, man, I'm Inky Johnson. I drove up from Atlanta. I want to open my book. And they would say, get out of here. We don't do that. I said, man, y'all rude. I thought y'all give away cars. Huh? I just got a book. And I got so discouraged. I went around the back of the building and I sat down in the parking lot and I looked up at the sky and I'm like, God, man, my wife's going to chew me out. And I get up and I go around the side of the building. At this point, everybody has went into the building. And it's one gentleman and he's sitting on the curb and he looks to be a homeless gentleman. And I sit down beside him and I say to him, sir, how are you? He said, man, I'm great. How are you? I said, man, I've seen better days. The irony of the situation. And I look up to my left. And when I look up to my left, coming down the sidewalk was Oprah and her security guard. And I stand up and I fix my suit. I say, here goes, right? And I start walking toward her and they're walking toward me. And I'm thinking in my mind, surely she's gonna send security up, move me out of the way, but I shot my shot. And as I'm walking, they're continuing to come, and she stops dead center in front of me, and she grabs my suit and she shakes it. And she says, this is a nice suit. I said, thank you. I know she was shaking it to see if I had a gun or a knife or something, right? And I said, I'm Inky Johnson. I drove up from Atlanta. I just wanted to bring you my book. She said, thank you. I said, can I take a picture with you? No problem. We take a picture. She says, all right, I got to get in and do my show. I said, thank you very much. And she was walking in to go in the building. Jeff is running. Jeff says, Ink, tell her to wait. I said, no. Oh, yeah, little faith, right? No. Right? Yeah. You're right. Yeah. All right. And I go to walk off, and the security guard says to me, hey, little man. And I stop. He said, come here. I want to tell you something. He said, I just want you to know what just happened never happens. He said, usually she'll send me up and say, move them out of the way, you know, tell them to send their book here and they'll never get it. I just want you to know what just transpired. It never happens. I said, man, thank you so much. Right? I walked off. I sent a picture to friends, family. I put it up on social media, right? And everybody's response was, hey, Ink, are you going to be on the show? Hey, Ink, you're going to be on the book club? Hey, Ink, you're going to be on Super Soul? I was like, I don't know. I don't care. They was like, what you mean you don't know? You don't care? I said, that moment wasn't about that. That wasn't a moment about getting on Oprah's show. I said, I got up that morning. I was trying to see, was God still with me? I was trying to see, was God still with the kid that left Atlanta, Georgia, that had this dream to go to the NFL when he was 7 and got there at 20 years old? I just need to see. It wasn't about Oprah. I just need to see, God, do I still got the connection? God, do you still hear me? And so when it happened, for me, what happened was, in the midst of the moment, it was confirmation when I was hugging her that God was saying to me, Ink, I got you. I got you, Ink. When I got back to Atlanta, people say, Ink, you need to speak. My simple prayer was this: okay, Lord, I'll be obedient. People are telling me I need to speak. I'll be obedient. Send me where you gotta send me. Out of obedience, because in the Bible it says obedience is better than sacrifice, but you give the average person a task, and what's the first thing they'll do? Judge the level of sacrifice without first being obedient. They'll say, what do I gotta give up? What is it going to cost me? And the first trip I got to speak was a 15-hour round trip to Mississippi, driving. And I get back home at 2 a.m. and my wife is standing there. And when I walk in the door, she's standing there. She said, how was it? I said, babe, it was great. She said, what you get? I said, they gave me this cool coffee mug. And she said to me, you sure this is what God called you to do? I said, yes, ma'am. She said, go for it. And I've been doing this for almost 13 years ever since. So from the bottom of my heart, I want to say thank you, right? Because as much as it is an honor and a privilege for you all, it's an honor and a privilege for me.
the level of let me take a real step back. If you're sitting in this chair and you want to do something that makes you happy and makes you money, let's just say that. I have no idea what people want in here, but fine. How many people happy money? Raise your hands if you want happy money. Raise it. Don't be scared. Great. Let me ask you a question. If you have the audacity to be happy and have money, which, by the way, the amount of people that have lots of money and are very happy is very small. It just is. If you want to be happy and have money, don't you think it should take a long time and it should be hard, right? That to me has been the most interesting thing. In this world that everything's so fast, and this world where one or two people look like Mark Zuckerberg or Travis, like where you can point to one or two people. You know, I don't know if you heard, there's 7.7 billion of us. But because you can point to one or two people that got it fast and a lot, all of a sudden everybody thinks it should be fast and a lot. At 34 years old, after working for 12 years, helping build my family business, I left my family business and I had no money. 34, no money. How many people here younger than 34? Raise your hands. D-Rock, where are you? Hold on, keep them up. D-Rock, where are you? Yo, right here, come here, look at this. Put the lights on, hands up. Look at this. Every hand here, stand up. Actually, if you raised your hand, stand up. Every person here standing is under 34 years old. When I left Wine Library day to day at 34 years old, I had nothing. When I started VaynerMedia, we started it in Buddy Media's conference room because I didn't have dollars to spend on rent. Imagine how early I think you are in your life. You can sit. Thank you. If you can keep the lights on, I like it. Thank you. Beautiful. Thank you. My friends, it's early. It's early for 100% of the people in the room. It's ridiculously early for 95% of this room. This internet thing, it's big. It's real big. We haven't even started. Please understand how lucky, that's the only word I have for it, how lucky you are that you get to live during this era. Right now, anything that comes out of your mouth that is complaining makes your grandfather want to punch you in the fucking face. You understand? Do you understand how much better you have it than every generation before you? This is such a ridiculously special time, and literally the far majority of this room is not going to take advantage of it because of the insecurity of worrying about somebody who they don't even know leaving a comment that they're ugly. Are you literally not going to take advantage of the actual ability to be happy and successful because somebody comes on your account and says you're stupid? But this is what's playing out. This is what's happening. I mean, look at different cultures. On the way here, do you know that one of the biggest things that was DM'd here is that there's a lot of people coming here by themselves and they wanted advice how to say hello to somebody that they didn't know? What are you scared of? They're gonna bite you? We are living in a very fascinating time. A very fascinating time. It reminds me of when new countries are born and people buy up real estate. The attention of this room is real estate. You're trying to get it. Everybody's living on these things. It's going to happen more, not less. You can judge it, that's fine, but that's what's going to happen. And so if you are not producing words and videos and sounds for these 7 platforms, you almost don't exist. Now, what you say, though, matters very much. And let me give you a couple advice points from somebody who's really won. The number one thing you have to always do is talk about what you know. I watch people try to talk about stuff they don't know every single day because it's hot. Whether it's cannabis or sports betting or blockchain or social media, people start talking about things they don't know anything about because they're trying to grab. They think they're going to get a fast score. Everybody wants a fast score. Do you know how many people have emailed me crying about buying Bitcoin at 10,000 a coin? Because it was going to be 100,000 in a year. People are looking for fast scores. You know how many people here spent $800 on a course because it was going to happen fast? Fast is bad. Fast is bad. Fast if you have talent and the right intent is amazing. Fast if you want cash immediately. So please understand the world you're living in. Take it into context. Understand how remarkable this era is. Next, this is the most important word. You have to deploy self-awareness. My friends, self-awareness is the most important word. If you don't know who you are, you have no shot. But do not be embarrassed of who you are. When I knew that I was an entrepreneur in the 80s, I got D's and F's in school, and that was not acceptable in the 80s and 90s in America. If you were a bad student in America in the 80s and 90s, you were a loser. My friends' parents looked at me as I was a loser, but I knew who I was. I was self-aware. I knew that I was an entrepreneur. I wanted to go and sell things on the weekend. I wanted to study the prices of wine and baseball cards instead of studying for school. I knew who I was. Playing video games seemed like a waste of time 20 years ago. Now there are people who make $50 million a year playing video games. If there is something you know and you like and you're passionate about, but it's not cool right now or important, do not deviate away from your thing. Triple down on your thing. The other thing is, be self-aware. How many people here are an entrepreneur or want to be? Raise your hands. I'm just curious. It's a lot of hands. The reality is, most of you can't be successful. I mean that. I'm not saying it to razz. It's rare to be a successful entrepreneur. It's hard. It's a real talent. We don't think it's a talent now because it's so easy to say you're one. One of the most important things about being self-aware is knowing, do you have the stomach to be an entrepreneur? Putting entrepreneur in your Instagram account, easy. Living the life of an entrepreneur where nobody else is on the line except you, hard, lonely, scary, difficult. If you do it because it's cool or you think it's right or you're not self-aware, it leads to depression and loss of money. If you deploy self-awareness and realize you're a number 2, a number 3, a number 4, you find an entrepreneur and you win. Self-awareness. You have to understand who you are. Without it, you are massively vulnerable in society. And the fact that we now live in a world where you're more than welcome to be what you are, so much more. Maybe not in your family because your parents want you to be a doctor and a lawyer and an engineer, but in the world, yes. And so I highly recommend self-awareness. It is easily, in my opinion, I believe that self-awareness and the ability to actually give without expectation are the 2 bricks of happiness. And it's been a big factor for me, which has allowed me to go fast. When you're stable, you can go fast because you're not worried about judgment. I've been able to do a lot of things because I'm not scared to lose. Because if I lose, it's my loss. If I lose money or time, it's my loss, not yours. I don't care what you say in the comments. That lack of fear is what gives an entrepreneur an advantage. That lack of fear is what lets somebody live life in happiness. We have to start having more important conversations of the operating system of your life. There are people here that work more on upgrading their phones than upgrading their minds. I mean it. I mean it. I am desperate. Listen, to come here all this way to talk about tactics is a waste of time. To come all this way and have one person in here gain actual courage to do something is super worth it. And for me, it's a very simple game. Let me give a very big secret to all the kids here who are living their lives for their parents or based on their parents' judgment. There's a very big secret that parents never tell you. If you go the other direction of where they want you to go and you become really successful, they are really proud and make pretend they never pushed you in the other direction. The number one thing I fear and the number one thing I learned, and this is very interesting to me, I'm going to tell you a story I don't tell a lot. When I was a little kid in Edison, New Jersey, when grandparents came over, I would go play with the grandparents a lot. Maybe it was because I lost 3 of my 4 grandparents as a kid, but even as I get goosebumps right here on stage, it's because I think I've always been filled with a lot of wisdom and old soul. It's just DNA. It's nothing I did. It's just been in me. But I was always gravitating towards old people my whole life. I mean, really old. You know, I'm 7, 8 years old, I see an 80-year-old, I run over, sit next to them, and talk. My whole life, I loved it, my whole life. And the number one thing I learned in the first 20 years of my life, spending more time with old people than most kids, is the biggest thing I fear is regret. Regret is scary. Resentment is very scary. The biggest reason I push kids to do what they want versus what their parents want is because I'd rather them and their parents have 5 or 6 or 7 years of bad than 80. Because it gets very ugly when you're 60 and they're 80 and you lived your life based on what they wanted and now you resent them. It gets real ugly real fast. I would rather you have the pain for the next 5 or 6 years of fighting and then have one of 2 things happen, which I think both are amazing. Number 1, you were right. You were right and you are an amazing fashion designer, not an engineer, and you built a real company and your parents are going to be very, very proud. Or you were wrong. You suck at fashion design. Nobody liked it, but at least for yourself, you never have to live the rest of your life asking yourself, what if? You win both ways. You live in a culture, I know, I watch. You live in a culture with a lot of expectations. You live in a culture where parents treat their kids as a property that indicates who they are. So does most of the world. This is not a Southeast Asia thing. This is not a Indonesia thing. This is a world thing. Parents are insecure too, and they like their kids closing their gap. We have to start talking about this, because now that it costs $0 to start a Spotify podcast, now that you can do that at 9 p.m., now there's nothing left. In 1974, not having money and time was an excuse. In 2019, it is not.